This video took 2 weeks and 6,507 words to bring you the most comprehensive mulberry family, Moraceae, sci-com, on the entire internet. Can you imagine that these alien-looking, bizarre plants can actually launch seeds just like a pea shooter? And they're actually relatives of the genus Morus. Even the jackfruit we often eat, figs, and breadfruit are also relatives of the genus Morus. What kind of crazy plant can shoot out its own reproductive cells with polyploid chromosomes? Today, let's get to know everything about the Moraceae family all at once. At the beginning of the video, those alien-looking plants belong to the genus Dorstenia. Although they're in the same family as mulberries, their bodies have evolved into succulent forms, with over 100 different species. The most bizarre thing about them is their inflorescence structure, which looks like a sea anemone or a sunflower disc. These disc-like flowers might look like one giant flower at first glance, but a huge cluster of tiny flowers is actually packed onto the receptacle, fused together on the tree to form a patchwork flower. What's even funnier is that each species in the genus Dorstenia has its own unique, bizarre traits. They're so niche that many don't even have common English names. Just bear with these names for a moment. We have the saddle-shaped Dorstenia foetida var, obesa, Dorstenia foetida var, obesa, and the caterpillar-like Dorstenia alata, and the sunburst-like Dorstenia horwoodii. There's also the succulent sun-like Dorstenia horwoodii, the bowl-shaped Dorstenia lavrani, and the vibrant Dorstenia caiapa. There's also the sun-like Dorstenia horwoodii and the classic giant specimen, Dorstenia gigas. As for Dorstenia gypsophila, I honestly don't even know how to describe it. With stems that are tall, short, fat, skinny, curved, straight, or completely wild and tangled, it's hard to believe sci-fi and horror movies didn't steal inspiration from them. Flowers are a plant's reproductive organs, and since their organs look so weird, their reproduction methods are usually just as crazy. Most Dorstenia species are monoecious, meaning both male and female flowers live on the same disc-like inflorescence, and they self-pollinate. Once the wind blows, the pollen travels from the male flowers to the female flowers. The mature seeds embed themselves into the disc, making it look just like a lotus pod. It acts just like the metal storm rapid-fire gun you see online. It shoots the seeds straight out. Man, Plants vs. Zombies wasn't lying to us. Real-life Peashooters actually exist. YOLO, right? Dorstenia is ready to explode. As the second largest genus in the Moraceae family, Dorstenia boasts incredible diversity. Its smallest member, a dwarf variety of Dorstenia foetida, has a stem only a few centimeters tall with shield-like leaves that hug the ground. If it shoots up a tiny firecracker-like inflorescence, it looks just like a common roadside weed. By the way, looking at the shape of this flower structure, you can probably guess why it's called the shield leaf Dorstenia. Most species in this genus are quite small. Even the largest member, Dorstenia gigas, despite carrying the grand name of giga, only grows up to 13 feet tall. Usually, it's just 3 to 6 feet high. With its short, fat, bulbous trunk sitting there, it looks like a miniature African baobab tree. Compared to its Moraceae relatives that can easily tower dozens of feet high, it's just a little guy. Most other Dorstenia are only the size of your palm. You could say that ordinary Dorstenia are so small, there isn't a pot they can't fit into. But thanks to their bizarre looks, even though they aren't mainstream, they have a cult-like following among succulent lovers. Dorstenia gigas has some decent fame in the succulent market. It's incredibly versatile, allowing you to train and prune the stems into whatever shape you want. It also has a very fascinating cultivar called the boulate leaf Dorstenia gigas. You can tell from the name that its main difference from the wild type is its foliage. The leaves have a unique, bubbly texture. If you look closely, it's actually just a regular Dorstenia gigas with leaf edges curling inward. But honestly, it looks way cooler, and that vibrant green is so refreshing. In the wild, Dorstenia gigas is considered a rare plant, native only to Socotra Island off the Horn of Africa. That's why it's nicknamed the Socotra fig. Along with the Socotra dragonblood tree and the Socotra desert rose, it's known as one of the 3 wonders of Socotra. a holy grail for succulent collectors. Dorstenia lavrani is another giant of the genus, native to the rugged limestone terrains of northern Somalia. The harshness of its habitat makes Dorstenia gigas look like it lives in luxury. Its stem is similar to Dorstenia gigas, growing thick and forming complex, tangled branches, but its leaves are broader and more oval-shaped. If you grow it well, the branches will be packed with leaves, making it a stunning sight. However, the life cycle of its leaves is very short. They quickly turn red and drop off. On the flip side, its sea anemone-like inflorescence is super resilient and blooms almost year-round. It's the exact opposite of regular plants. Due to its unique native habitat and extremely slow growth rate, raising a rock-dwelling Dorstenia lavrani requires massive patience. But if you manage to keep it alive, its stem will reward you by releasing a unique, natural milky fragrance. Lately, a rising star has emerged in the Dorstenia world, Dorstenia alata, often called the mini coconut Dorstenia. As the name implies, it looks like a miniature coconut tree. Its tiny size allows it to feel right at home in a palm-sized pot. Plus, what makes it so awesome is its incredible ability to branch out. It frequently sprouts tons of offsets around the main stem, creating a thriving mini coconut grove right on your windowsill, giving you those tropical beach vibes. No wonder its popularity in the succulent market is skyrocketing. So, if the genus Dorstenia is so full of superstars, why is it so obscure here? If we look at its global distribution map, the orange areas represent its native habitats. You can see it's mainly distributed in tropical East Africa, Central Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Indian subcontinent. It's far away from Europe, East Asia, and North America, the regions with highly developed digital media. Without viral internet publicity, it's no surprise it stays under the radar. Dorstenia might be niche, but you've definitely eaten the next one on our list, jackfruit. Jackfruit is a massive tropical evergreen tree. You can find it cultivated all over Yunnan and Hainan. Long before pineapples from the Americas arrived in China, the name palomi, jackfruit, already existed, rooted in the Buddhist Sanskrit term prajnaparamita. The word pineapple in Chinese actually borrowed its name from the jackfruit. This gargantuan fruit is the true OG of the tropical giants. Because jackfruit is so massive, covered in tiny spikes, and has a greenish-yellow rind, it screams tropical vibes. Many people think jackfruit must be a close relative of the durian, but in reality, they have absolutely zero relation. Durian belongs to the Malvaceae family, making it a relative of cotton. Its fruit structure is a capsule that splits open into several compartments when ripe. Meanwhile, the Moraceae family jackfruit has nothing to do with durian, yet through evolutionary coincidence, it achieved a striking visual similarity. First off, both trees grow incredibly tall, and both exhibit cauliflory, a phenomenon where flowers and fruits grow directly out of the main trunk. A durian flower develops into a single massive fruit, while a jackfruit flower looks like a giant green Q-tip covered in tiny fuzz. This Q-tip is actually the jackfruit's inflorescence. What is an inflorescence? Well, take a look at the agave's flowering structure. It has a distinct, elongated main axis with lots of branches, and those branches hold tons of tiny flowers. This entire cluster dedicated to bearing flowers is called an inflorescence. A jackfruit inflorescence is like a compressed file where hundreds of tiny flowers are packed tightly into a single green Q-tip shape. The fruit that develops from this structure is called a multiple fruit, or syncarp. A multiple fruit is formed by the fusion of many individual flowers, so it naturally contains many small fruits inside. When we eat jackfruit, is that yellow part wrapping the hard seed actually the seed? Actually, that hard, seed-like thing in the middle is the true fruit, botanically classified as an achene. Everything outside the seed is highly vestigial, almost non-existent, so you can pretty much just treat it as a seed. And those seeds are totally edible when boiled or roasted. As for the sweet, juicy flesh we love to eat, it actually develops from the perianth segments of the flowers. Together with the central axis, they fuse into a mega-sized multiple fruit. A single jackfruit can weigh over 77 pounds, heavier than a toddler. And unlike durians, which are brittle and can crack easily upon impact, a jackfruit has a thick, tubular structural wrapping protecting its core. The growth logic of its outer green skin is similar to a cycad's. Its tough outer rind works perfectly with the internal tubular structures to act as a shock absorber. When a jackfruit plummets from a tall tree, the impact force that should have crushed the core gets dispersed across the surface, creating cracks instead. This makes the jackfruit the ultimate heavyweight champion of impact resistance. If you've ever cut open a whole jackfruit, you'll notice it oozes a lot of sticky white sap. We've mentioned before that many plants with white latex can be used to harvest rubber. Can we get rubber from jackfruit sap? The answer is no, because its molecular weight is too low, meaning the rubber quality is terrible and the yield is incredibly low. Theoretically, it's possible, but practically, nobody uses jackfruit for commercial rubber. The genus Artocarpus, which jackfruit belongs to, contains many other delicious edible species. For example, the cempedak. It sounds like it should taste like durian, but it's purely an Artocarpus relative. However, it's smaller, much juicier, and packs an even more intense aroma. The genus Artocarpus also includes species that don't look like jackfruit at all and taste completely different, like the breadfruit tree, Artocarpus altilis, which bears a fruit called breadfruit. Since it has bread right in the name, tons of people are curious about its taste. So, I spent a pretty penny to buy one. You can see its exterior looks a lot like a jackfruit, just way smaller. Its outer skin is quite thin and peels off easily. When cut open, its texture is incredibly creamy and smooth. While the outer flesh is soft, the core is rock hard and a real pain to chop through. The distribution of its edible parts is similar to a jackfruit. The further inside you go, the tougher it gets. Flavor-wise, it tastes like a less oily avocado mixed with notes of durian and overripe banana. It has a distinct herbal aroma with a subtle, unexaggerated sweetness. As someone who loves trying exotic fruits, I'd give breadfruit a pretty solid review. However, if you eat too much of it, that raw, grassy aftertaste can get a bit overwhelming. Plus, within just a few minutes of cutting it open, it oxidizes and turns black, completely ruining its aesthetic. But to the indigenous people of the Pacific Islands, breadfruit isn't a fruit, it's a staple carb. Because breadfruit is packed with starch, roasting it gives it a texture exactly like baked potatoes or freshly baked bread. You can easily slice one up and toss it into a pot to boil like a sweet potato. For the Pacific Islanders, breadfruit is a big deal. If you look at a cross-section of a cultivated breadfruit, it's almost entirely seedless. How can a fruit have no seeds? Well, wild breadfruits are actually packed with a massive ring of seeds. The breadfruit we eat today is a seedless variety cultivated through centuries of human selection, not some random wild fruit. To the islanders, breadfruit ranks right up there with taro and coconut. Basically, if you plant just one tree anywhere, it can yield over 440 pounds of breadfruit a year. Since breadfruits tend to ripen all at once and spoil incredibly fast, islanders peel and wash them, then bury them in pits lined with leaves to let them ferment. This creates a sweet, sour, and sticky paste that can be preserved for over a year. Beyond the fruit, every single part of the breadfruit tree is useful. Their bark can be beaten to create bark cloth for clothing. The timber is lightweight, yet highly resistant to termites and rot, making it the premier choice for building outrigger canoes. Best of all, the white sap that oozes from the tree is harvested by native Hawaiians as a super sticky resin. They put it on sticks to catch birds. Food, clothing, and transportation all in one tree. Talk about an absolute powerhouse. While the genus Artocarpus might feel a bit exotic to some, other members of the Moraceae family are right in our backyards, like the genus Morus, the classic mulberry tree. Its scientific name is Morus alba, where alba means white in Latin. Supposedly, Carl Linnaeus named the genus after noticing that the bark secretes a milky white sap when damaged. As the true birthplace of the mulberry tree, China has the oldest history of mulberry cultivation and sericulture in the world. Dating back over 5,000 years, the mulberry tree has been deeply woven into our daily lives and culture. You could say its history represents a massive chunk of Chinese civilization. Mulberry leaves are heart-shaped or oval with serrated edges and have a slightly thick texture. In China, a lot of people raised silkworms when they were in elementary school. Buying them always came with a giant bag of mulberry leaves. Back then, watching the silkworms munch on the leaves and listening to that crunch-crunch sound was incredibly satisfying and relaxing. Mulberry flowers are made of clusters of tiny blossoms. But unlike the inflorescences of figs and jackfruits, a mulberry flower looks just like a little caterpillar. Each tiny sphere on it is actually an individual flower. This structure is called a catkin or a let. Because it looks like a cat's tail, the English word catkin literally means little kitten. Don't let the soft name fool you, though. The mulberry's pollination method is hardcore. To maximize wind pollination, the male flowers will launch their pollen at a speed that practically pushes the theoretical physical limits of plant movement. The fruit that forms after pollination is the mulberry we love to eat. Since it's a multiple fruit, you can see all the tiny individual drupelets packed together. Although most mulberry trees bear fruit that ripens to a deep red or purple-black, some variants do produce completely white mulberries, white mulberry. This happens due to a genetic mutation that turns off the production of the fruit's natural pigment, anthocyanin. Anthocyanin is a water-soluble flavonoid compound, and it's the exact culprit behind those stubborn stains on your hands, face, and clothes. As the mulberry matures, its anthocyanin levels skyrocket. That's why the ripening process is a beautiful transition from green to deep purple-black. White mulberries contain zero or very minimal anthocyanins, which is why they stay locked in that pale white look. In Xinjiang, there is an absolutely mind-blowing mulberry tree. While most plants and animals have single-digit chromosome ploidy levels, this thing is a natural 22-ploid, decapoploid. This biological miracle is the Xinjiang medicinal mulberry. Even though its fruits look almost identical to regular white mulberries, they belong to a completely different species. Its scientific name is Morus nigra, which translates directly to black mulberry. From an evolutionary biology perspective, the higher the ploidy level, the worse the genetic stability becomes. In plain English, as chromosome ploidy increases, the plant's ability to bear fruit plummets. By the time you hit 10 ploid or 12 ploid, they usually become sterile and can't produce fruit at all. Yet, the 22 ploid black mulberry miraculously stabilizes and reproduces perfectly, shocking the botanical world. Native to Iran, it was introduced to Xinjiang in the 16th century. The local ethnic minorities treat it as a premium treasure among fruits, using it not just as food, but also for skincare and as a crucial herb in traditional medicine. That's how it earned its reputation as the medicinal mulberry. In the Uyghur language, the black mulberry is crowned the king of mulberries, showing just how deeply it's loved by the people of Xinjiang. Though they look similar, the black mulberry is way more sweet, tart, and juicy than regular mulberries. But that also means it's incredibly fragile to store and transport. Outside of southern Xinjiang, it's nearly impossible to find them fresh. While the genus Morus is a major economic crop that was heavily promoted and planted throughout ancient history, there's another Moraceae plant that needs zero human help to cultivate. It just automatically spawns near your house. Meet the paper mulberry, Brucenetia papyrifera. The paper mulberry is insanely common. While it can grow into a massive tree, most of the ones we see around are just small, scrubby things. You can find them spawning effortlessly in abandoned factories, empty lots, or construction sites. They grow completely wild like stray dogs, so much so that people constantly have to waste time clearing them out. But despite being a nuisance, the paper mulberry is actually super useful. For instance, its leaves make high-quality pig feed. Its fruit is also a multiple fruit, looking like bright, reddish-orange fuzzy spheres. Because it's so ubiquitous, it often gets caked in city dust, giving people the vibe that it's toxic or inedible. but it actually tastes pleasantly tart and is technically edible. Realistically, though, it's way too dirty, so I don't recommend foraging it in urban areas. The paper mulberry is easily the MVP when it comes to ancient paper-making materials. In ancient times, if you wanted to make paper, you'd use bast fibers like ramie or jute. But if you wanted the highest performing, premium quality paper, you'd make it out of tree bark. Specifically, mulberry bark and paper mulberry bark, chupai, were the absolute mainstream choices. If you ever time travel to ancient China, definitely don't sleep on the value of the paper mulberry. Now, there is another heavyweight contender you absolutely must remember. It wasn't just a daily essential for ancient emperors. It was once the literal symbol of imperial power. It is the Cudrania tree, known in Chinese as jerk. Even if you're a tech-savvy person who reads a lot on screens, you might rarely come across this character. As a close relative of the mulberry, they look incredibly alike in terms of botanical classification and appearance. They look almost identical, except the Cudrania tree has sharp thorns on its branches and slightly different leaves. It can even be used to brew a sweet and tart wine that makes your mouth water. Its fruit is a multiple fruit very similar to a mulberry, but it looks remarkably like a round, bumpy lychee. Not only can you eat it fresh like a fruit, but you can also ferment it into a delicious wine. Traditional medicine features a famous prescription that utilizes its incredibly powerful roots, which are said to be strong enough to pierce through deep-seated ailments, giving it its fierce reputation. As for how it connected with imperial emperors, everyone knows the story of Emperor Zhao Kuangyin of the Song dynasty and his legendary yellow robe ascension. If you split open a piece of Cudrania wood, you'll find that its interior is a vibrant, brilliant golden yellow, the exact shade of an imperial dragon robe. That's right, starting from the Sui dynasty, the yellow robes worn by ancient Chinese emperors were dyed using natural pigments extracted from this exact wood. Because of this, the imperial robe earned the nickname Zherobe, crowning the Cudrania tree as the emperor's wood. If you happen to have one of these in your yard, congratulations, you've got the raw materials for royalty. Beyond the heartwood's use as an imperial dye, Cudrania timber is insanely dense and hard. Not only is it highly resistant to rot, but it features a gorgeous, elegant grain. This makes it an elite choice for high-end furniture crafting, ranking alongside southern rosewood as the king of northern timbers. While anyone can fashion a bow out of bamboo, bamboo bows are ultimately lacking in power and snap. If you wanted to forge a truly devastating, masterclass self-bow, your absolute best choice would be Cudrania wood. Its density is unmatched, especially when using the golden heartwood to construct the bow's core. If you can pull back a heavyweight Cudrania war bow, you can easily conquer empires. The imperial throne is yours. Finally, let's wrap up this episode. We mainly talked about the Moraceae family today. Here's a mind-blowing, counterintuitive fact. Over 70% of species in the mulberry family are actually ficus plants, meaning the figs we covered in our previous video. Even though individual Moraceae flowers are incredibly tiny, by harnessing the power of a collective cluster, they can fuse into massive heavyweights like jackfruits and breadfruits. They also go toe-to-toe with the Malvaceae family in human textile history. The silk harvested from mulberry-fed silkworms is a luxury material far more precious than cotton, while the bark of figs, mulberries, and paper mulberries can be woven into ropes, paper, and clothing, just like the ramie and jute of the Malvaceae family. They are truly the ultimate double threats of the textile and fruit worlds. Alright, that's it for today's video. Don't forget to drop a comment, smash that like button, and subscribe. I'll be with you all the way on our future journeys, bringing you more hardcore and fun sci-com videos.